Hello and welcome to another episode of Not Too Deep. I'm your host, Grace Helbig. I'm so excited today to have Oge Egbuonu with us. She is absolutely incredible. She has a wonderful story. She was a former retail manager. She quit that job because it was awful. She became a yogi that got into breath work because of, the thing we all find ourselves in, depression. And then she's also now made her directorial debut in Invisible Portraits, a documentary series celebrating the lives of Black women and Black girls. And it is just so incredible. Her energy is just so wonderful. She reminded me that the most important breath work is what we do every day. It keeps us from, dying. Lots of really wonderful conversation here. So please enjoy this episode of Not Too Deep with Oge Egbuonu.
Not too deep. Not too deep. With Grace Helbig.
Oge, I'm so excited to talk to you. One, I just feel like you exude this calm, poised energy that I feel like I could glean so much from. So I'm beyond excited to have a conversation with you. First of all, was that a cat in the background? Sorry.
Because
I love it.
It's a French bulldog.
You have French bulldog?
Yes, her name is Rumi, like the poet. And she's 11 months.
You have a baby French bulldog. That is like a dream of mine. Is this new in your world, or have you had her for a few months?
Well, I've had her for a few months. I gifted her to myself on my birthday last year, and I got her when she was 8 weeks old. So I've had her now for about 9 months.
And what's her personality if she has fully developed into one?
She's a diva. She just is on her last phase of being in heat. So the diva attitude amplified or magnified times 10. It was a lot.
I also think that's so wonderful that you gifted yourself a French bulldog for your birthday, because truly as an adult, you can do whatever you want. And I think that's so incredible.
You really can. Like, that is one of the perks of adulthood, I will say.
Yeah. Okay. I could talk for 3 hours about wanting to know every single thing about your French bulldog, but I want to know about you. You have an incredible story that, not to reduce it, but I mean, you were a yogi, you're a director now. But I want to hear about like the beginnings of everything. How did you get into, well, you're from Texas, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So how did you get into healing? How did you get into yoga? That whole world, first of all.
Depression.
Yeah. That'll do it. Okay.
That'll definitely do it.
Yeah.
I had moved to LA it's going on now almost 9.5, 10 years, from Houston, Texas. And I had moved to LA working with a company that I had worked with in Houston for about 4 years. And they moved me out to LA to help run the stores here in LA. And 6 months into it, I just quit because I was like, I can't do this. I was 26 at the time. I was young. Yeah. And this company, I mean, I already knew that the company was inherently racist. But, like, I was so young and naive, and I was like, I can change this company. I just want to show them how to do good. And then when I moved to LA, it just really magnified how not only racist, but homophobic and sexist and ableist this company was. And I was like, I cannot do this. And so I quit 6 months into it, and I fell into like a really dark phase of depression. Like, it was like 3 months where I literally could not leave my home. And a friend that I had met, an associate rather, that I had met while working at this store in LA, she was like, you should come do yoga. Like, yoga makes me feel so good. And I was like, okay.
That cliche thing that people say about yoga.
Yeah. And I had never even heard of yoga prior to that moment. And so I go take this vinyasa class, and I absolutely hated it. I was like, oh, this is not it. Like, no, I'm good. No, I'm not interested. And a week later, another associate, that an acquaintance that I had met, was like, oh, well, come take this yoga class with me. And I was like, absolutely not, like, not into it. And she's like, but it's different. It's about breath work and meditation. And I was like, what is that? And I go to this restorative yoga class, and I'm bawling, crying throughout the entire class because I was feeling things that I had never felt before in my body. And I was like, what was that? And so I got addicted to it, and I started taking it like 4 or 5 times a week. And then I was like, oh, I want to teach this. This is so therapeutic and healing. And that's how the journey started with yoga.
Wow, that's so interesting, because I am a person that could probably benefit from yoga and breath work and meditation, but I am also one of those people that's like uncomfortable with being vulnerable in that way. And I feel like there is such a dependence on vulnerability. Like, now that you've experienced it and fallen in love with it, what kind of advice or like thoughts do you give to people that are like you were in the beginning, hesitant about all of it?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said, right? Like, give yourself the grace to be vulnerable, because, we are very much so conditioned to be guarded, and rightfully so, for so many different reasons, right? But there is so much healing in vulnerability. And if you feel that big classes are not your thing, one of the good graces of restorative yoga is that most people don't take it because of that reason. So the classes are very small and intimate. But I would really just say start off with like breath work, right? And or meditation. And you can do that in the confines of your own home, or you can do that with a one-on-one with a yoga instructor or a meditation or breathwork facilitator. But I will say, grant yourself the permission and the grace to be vulnerable, because it is so therapeutic and it's so healing.
Now, on the other side of that, is there ever a time when it's too much yoga? Is there a cap on how much breath work you can do throughout a week or a day?
Absolutely not. When it comes to breath work and meditation, I say absolutely not, because you're doing breath work right now as you're talking to me, right? If you wasn't doing it, you'll be dead. Right. So it's just really,
very
so when you think about breath work, when you think about breath work, it's really about just being intentional with your breath and allowing yourself to feel where you may be holding tension in your body, right? Like, most of us walk around with like clenched jaws or like tightened shoulders or our fist balled up, and you not know where you're holding tension in your body. So when you're intentionally doing breath work, it's just allowing you to be present and just see what's showing up for you in your body and in the space that you're currently in. So I don't think it's ever too much of that. But when it comes to, I would say, the physical practice of yoga, right? The asanas, I think that if it's taught correctly, it's never too much of that, right? It's when it's not taught correctly and so many people get injured because you're trying to figure it out in a class full of so many different people. But when anything is done intentionally, I don't think it's ever too much of it.
Good to know. Also, I love that, if you don't do your breath work, you physically die. That's a great takeaway for me. Okay, talk to me about going from, you quit this terrible company, you find yoga to, find yourself a bit. How do you get into the production, producing, directing, entertainment side of things from there?
The casting couch. No,
yeah, really? I'm like, I respect anyone's journey if it got them to the beautiful place you're in now.
No, I did not do that, guys. I kid you not. But no, it was really because I was teaching yoga all through LA, and a friend recommended me to this studio in Beverly Hills. And the owners were like, well, can you come in and do a mock session for us? Because they were very new to restorative yoga. And I go in and do a session for the owners, and they're like, oh my God, we love this. We want you to start teaching here. Our clients could benefit from it. So I was like, okay, let's continue conversations and figure out how we can make it work for our schedules. Yeah. And 2 days later, they send me an email and they say, hey, we have a VIP client. We think will love your type of yoga. And I was like, oh, okay. They're like, can you come tomorrow? And I was like, I can't. My schedule was so packed.
That's very ominous too.
Right? And then they were like, and I was like, I'm so sorry, but I can't make tomorrow. They're like, he'll pay you double. And I was like, I can't do it. They're like, he'll pay you triple. I was like, I'll be there at 8 a.m. So,
I suddenly have an opening. Got it.
So I had to rearrange my schedule. And I go and I do this session for this guy. And at the end of the session, he goes, I really want to start practicing with you. Like, is there any way you can see me throughout the week? And I was like, well, my schedule really was, I was like, there's just no way. I'm teaching classes and I'm teaching privates. Like, I can't make it work. Yeah. And then like a few days later, maybe a few weeks later, a client had went on holiday for like 3 months. She was going to go travel the world. And I was like, yo, I have a 3-month slot. Like, you can come in and I can see you as much as I can. But when the 3 months is up, we'll figure it out. So he starts doing these sessions with me. And I would say maybe like 4 or 6 weeks into it, he looks at me at the one session and he goes, have you ever thought about working in film and music? And I was like, absolutely not. Not interested. Didn't go to school for it. And no. And then I'm thinking like, oh, this is what they mean by the casting couch. These older guys try to get you to like, be like, oh, I see something in you. And I was just like, not interested. And then he was like, oh, okay. And then like every time I saw him afterwards, Jed would always say, I really think you should consider it. Like, there's just something about you. And I was just like, huh. So then a few weeks into it, I was like, I don't even know your last name. I only know you as Jed. Like, what is your last name and what do you do? And so then he goes on to start explaining, like, he's like, you know, I was the CEO and chairman of Sony Music in the UK. And now me and my business partner, Colin Firth, just started a production company 6 months ago. I had no clue who Colin Firth was. I was like, who was that? He was like, what? I was
like, that sounds like someone that makes cleaning products. I don't know.
He was like, he starts naming all his films. He's like, King's Speech. And I'm like, dope. He's like, okay, I need you to watch this. And then the next time I see you, let's talk. And so I watch King's Speech and I come back and I'm like, oh, like, great movie. Don't know who he is. And I still am not really interested because I don't know anything about it. So then a few weeks later, he goes, listen, I followed my intuition all my life. And for some reason, it's really telling me I should bring you on to come work with us. And so I just want you to really consider it. And then let's talk. So then I go home and call like my mom and my best friend. I'm like, this is wild. Like, what should I do? And it was my mom who was like, try it for 3 months. If you don't like it, quit. Like, just try it. And so I was like, okay. And that led to what now is 6 years in the industry?
Wow. That's a wild story. And feels like it could have ended in a totally terrible way. But wow. I mean, did you have, this person said that they trusted their intuition. Was there anything in you, like intuitively, that you were like, this feel like I may as well? Or were there things that were still like, because it sounds very similar to the way you started yoga, of being like, no, not for me, but then finding out that like, actually it is for you.
That has actually been the story of my life. I was like, oh, we're doing that. And then a few months or years later, the universe was like, actually you are. Like what I'm learning now is that in those moments when I'm feeling fear, it's because I'm like resistant against what is actually coming up for me. And so now I've learned to just dive into that and allow myself to open to whatever is being presented to me if it feels right. So in that moment, I didn't even allow myself to assess whether it felt right. I was just like, oh, this is new. No, not doing it. Don't know about it. Like, it's very like guarded with it all. Because also it required me to move. Like I had to move to London, and I moved to London and lived there for 4 years. Right.
Wow.
So it was just, in the time, my intuition probably was saying to try it and do it, but there was just so much fear that was coming up for me that I was resistant initially.
A huge leap of faith on something that is very intangible to like process for yourself. It's incredible. But so now you are 6 years into the business, and the most recent project, Invisible Portraits, is so incredible and beautiful. How did this come to you?
Really random. So
again, this is truly the story of your life.
It really is.
I see how you work. Okay, got it.
After I left Rain Dog, I moved back to LA. Actually, what I noticed is that the aha moments in my life really come after dark bouts of depression. So I moved back to LA and I was experiencing depression. And
LA has that effect on all of us.
I was just like, did I make the right decision to leave? Like, what am I going to do next? I was so confused about my next steps. And I had been in this space of depression for about 4 weeks. Like, it was really heavy. And a woman that I met a few months prior to at some charity event sends me a text randomly. And she's like, hey, I know we don't really know each other, really random, but I'm at lunch with a friend. He has this idea. And I thought about you, like, can you meet him tomorrow before he flies out of LA? And initially I was like, girl, I'm so depressed. I don't want to meet nobody. And I was resistant to it. And then she was just like, well, just meet with him. Like, and if you don't feel it, then leave the meeting. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll meet. So the next day I go and I walk into this meeting, and it's this like middle-aged white guy sitting across from me, Michael Meyer. And I sit down, we do the formals, like, hi, how are you? And I was like, so what's the plan? And he's like, well, you know, I was watching this YouTube clip of Isaiah Thomas being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And in this clip, his mother's crying because he's like sharing how she made all these sacrifices for him to be where he's at today. And it hit me in that moment that there is nothing out really that celebrates the Black mother. And I want to create something that does that. And I was like, what? Like,
the last thing you're expecting to hear from this white man.
I was like, there has to be more. Like, this cannot be the real reason why you want to do this. He's like, no, like, this is why. And so I was like, oh, that's wild. And I was like, okay, well, if I was to create something, like, I would create something that celebrate Black women and girls, because we're that before we're mothers. And he was like, okay, if you can come up with an idea and I like it, I'll fully fund it. And I was like, what? Like, wait, what?
Yeah, record player scratch, huh?
Yeah. And I was just like, huh? And in my head, I'm like, I hope he knows that I'm not a director. So I was like, let me just pitch together an idea. And if he likes it, I'll bring on a director and bring a team on. Because at the time, like, in the industry, I was only known as a producer. Okay. And so I come back and I pitched this idea to Michael, and he's like, okay, I'll fully fund it. How much do you need? Go make it. And I was like, what? I was like, I'm not no director. I was like, no. He was like, is this your story? Is this your vision? And I'm like, yeah. He was like, well, then I fully support it. I want you to go make it. And initially I was like, oh no, like like, mm-mm. And
again, the resistance.
The resistance, right?
Yeah.
It took me talking to a dear friend, and she was like, why would you not make it? You know? And she was like, if it's, if it's fear, like, just know that's valid. And like, you have the full weight of me and my team to support you. You need it. Like, but you're making this story. And, you know, in that moment I called him and said, okay, I'll do it. And that's how I started.
Wow. I mean, there must have been just a roller coaster of emotions in saying yes to this project, because I mean, I read it took 3 years to create the entire project.
Yeah.
And so what's that like when you're going in? First of all, you're saying yes to something that you've technically never done before in a story that's, incredibly important. Like, I'd be a fucking mess on the floor. Like, how did you get yourself through this? Like, how did this come together for you?
I got through it through therapy. Yeah. The first 9 months, I put myself into pre-production, which is what the first 9 months, all I did was 6 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day. I would just read and study the history of Black women. So I would read books and articles about Black women written by Black women. And it started to, like, 3 months into it, it got really dark and heavy. Like, you're reading these slave narratives about like 7-year-old girls being raped and forced to have babies, right? You're reading about the involuntary experimentation on Black women's bodies. Like, you're reading about all this dark and heavy things that you, A, didn't know about, and B, they don't teach in schools, right? And so the day that I wouldn't do it, which was Sunday, that would be the day that I would rest, because every other day I was in research mode. I couldn't get out of bed before like the afternoon. Like, I would be in bed in a ball crying. And I was like, yo, am I depressed again? Like, where is it coming from? And so I reached out to my therapist and was like, I need to get back into therapy. This is very heavy for me. And there's no way that I'm going to finish this documentary if I don't have this extra resource and tool. And so my therapist played a huge part in helping me navigate the feelings, the range of the feelings that I was feeling in the pre-production phase of it. So it was heavy. And then being on set, right? Like, talking to these scholars and historians, and even to these everyday women and girls who've lost their sons and daughters to police violence, right? It was very real for them. And in those moments, I can tell you how many times we didn't cry on set as a crew versus how many times we did. we didn't,
Yeah.
right? Like there was so much tears because, you cultivate a space for these people to be vulnerable and share things that they've never shared in public. And you have to do, I think, an intentional job in cultivating space for them to feel safe to do that, right? So it was challenging.
I'm sure. It also just the ability for you to recognize like the challenge and get help through it to create such a beautiful end product is very cool overall. I read somewhere that the younger girls' stories were the ones that really struck you through the process. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, all of it really struck me, but there was this one young girl in particular, Empress, when we were interviewing her and I asked her a question about how does she view beauty and does she think that she's beautiful? And she goes on to say, but it's really challenging because, I'm cross-eyed. And so when I go out into the world, so many people on a daily basis come up to me asking me what's wrong with my eyes. And so I had to teach myself to go into the mirror at home and say that I'm beautiful. And then I just lost it on set. I'm like bawling, crying. I look around, the crew is crying. I look to the right, her mother is bawling, crying. Because even her mother didn't know that she did that, right? Wow. And so that was her first time hearing that. And I'm like, at the tender age of like 11 and 12 and 13, I had no wherewithal to go to a mirror and tell myself I'm beautiful or say these affirmations to myself because the world consistently told me that I wasn't. And so the fact that she was able to do that really rocked me to my core. And I was like, are you in therapy? And she was like, no, what's that? And I was like, well, and that just really shook me because I'm like, I'm learning this in therapy now. And I'm 30. At the time I was 32. I was like, I'm 32. Like it was just, it was so, it was crazy.
It's so beautiful to process all of that and almost like difficult to process that someone is so resilient in that way. How has it been since the film's out? How has the response been? I'm sure you're still processing that too, because it only came out a week ago or so? 2 weeks ago?
Well, I'm processing it now because, the past few weeks has been so busy with press.
Right.
And so I would say the past 4 days has really been me trying to process it all. And it's been interesting. Like, I get DMs all the time and emails all the time now from people sharing their stories and like, especially like young Black women saying how they feel seen and older Black women saying how they feel seen. And even just like Black men reaching out being like, I didn't know the history. Like, I didn't know this. And so I'm going to show up better as a brother. I'm going to show up better as a husband and a father. To even folks who aren't Black reaching out saying like, I had no clue. Right. And so I'm trying to process what it's been like for me, but also hold space for those who are sharing messages with me, whether it's via DMs or emails. So it's been, I'm sure
you're in it still. So I'm sure it's hard to like fully, have a conclusion on how everything is going currently. But I do have a question because you're so busy. When you do have a day off, which I'm sure is rare, especially now, what's your go-to like? Do you laze around? Do you binge watch television? Do you like practice yoga? Like what's your go-to?
My go-to is really listening to jazz music and reading. Like I'm a ferocious reader. Like I love reading. And lately I've been reading a lot of Bell Hooks and James Baldwin. And so like, that's my go-to. Like that's where I find my sense of peace and calm is in reading those various narratives and essays in their books. So I do that when I need to ground myself. I stretch every day and I do meditation and breath work every day. So that's a non-negotiable. But the days that I'm off to recenter myself is really just listening to jazz and reading books.
Nice. Also, I see on your Instagram that you put like daily meditations and things like that out into the world, which I think is so lovely because we so often forget to like pause and think about things in a more like focused manner. And so I, for one, appreciate that's a non-negotiable for you every day. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, I have a bunch more questions for you. They're not as deep as those. So just be prepared. We'll be right back with more Not Too Deep.
Not too deep with Grace Helbig.
Hello, listeners. Grace Helbig here, wanting to say two things. A big thank you for listening to the podcast. If you're a regular listener, if this is your first time listening, welcome and thank you. And second thing, if you are enjoying yourself here in this not too deep world we've built and you'd like to leave us a review, that would be so wonderful. If you can go to the iTunes store, the App Store, and leave us a lovely little review, comment. How are you feeling? Good, bad, otherwise? Maybe just good or otherwise would be appreciated. Other than that, enjoy the podcast. Okay, Oge, we are back in, and now we're going to get to the questions I ask every single guest that is on the podcast.
Okay.
And the first one is, who, alive or dead, would you most like to throw cold spaghetti at?
Cold spaghetti.
Yes.
Ah!
I told you these wouldn't be as deep as the other questions.
I would like to throw cold spaghetti at 45.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a very popular answer. Mm-hmm. And you don't really need to give us an explanation. I think it's all right there. Okay, the other question I ask every single guest is to tell us your worst pant shitting story or like a bathroom emergency story, but you can only use 3 words or 3 small phrases to describe the event. So, for instance, mine is college, jogging, front lawn.
Oh, okay. Mine would be New Year's Eve party.
Yeah.
Hot non-binary person.
Okay.
And bathroom.
Yeah. All right. No follow-up questions. That paints a beautiful and a stressful picture. Okay. Now we're doing this kind of new segment on the podcast called Deep or Hot, where basically you can choose to answer a deep question that we have for you, or you can give us a hot take on something if you have something that's currently been bothering you that you need to get off your chest.
Okay.
Would you like a deep question or to give us a hot take?
A deep question.
Okay, here's your question. And this kind of goes along with what you were telling us before about the girl that you had interviewed. What were the hurdles of accepting your true beauty?
What were the hurdles? I would say the hurdles were really all the myths that I was made to believe to be true, which is that you had to be slender and you had to be light skinned and you had to have long hair. And because I didn't see anyone that really looked like me growing up, I felt so not beautiful. And then as I started to realize my own beauty, I would get things like, oh, you're really pretty for a dark skinned girl. Or like, ooh, like you have really nice hair for a dark skinned girl. So then like, as I'm like, I felt like blossoming into accepting my beauty, I was combated with that as well. Yeah. So that led to a lot of me questioning my beauty. I would say it wasn't until about 9 years ago when I shaved my head bald, that I was like, I don't even care. Like, I'm just going to do me. Yeah. And I rocked a bald head for 9 years. I just grew it back like 8 weeks ago. Yeah. So prior to that, I was bald.
Wow. I mean, that's a beautiful answer. And I will be ruminating on that throughout the rest of the day. One other question I have for you. This last year, obviously, has been wild for everyone. Have you picked up any pandemic hobbies? Have you picked up any? Are you doing bread making? Are you making scarves? Are you doing anything other than, being incredibly busy making documentaries?
I bought 2 Our Place pans because I was like, I'm going to start teaching myself how to cook.
I have one of those too. It's currently in my sink. Yeah.
And it's on my stove and it has not been used yet.
Really?
So, yeah. So I picked up things hoping to pick up hobbies, but it hasn't even implemented yet.
Okay. I mean, there's still time, I guess. My other question is, what do you watch? We know you read and you listen to jazz. When you sit down to watch something, are you watching TV? Are you watching films?
It really just depends on it. Like if a show is really good or a film is really good and it's a must see and everyone's like, you have to see it, then I'll watch it. I really don't just sit around watching TV.
Yeah. Good for you. That's really nice.
But yeah, no, I like to create content, but I'm really not. It just has to be good. Like recently I saw Miss America on Hulu, which I loved.
Yeah.
I May Destroy You on HBO. Love.
Yeah.
I also love Chewing Gum. I binge watched that. I love Big Mouth on Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if I am watching something, it has to be something really funny or just really good.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, I'm curious about your relationship with social media. Is it something you enjoy? Do you kind of take it in small doses? Like, how is your relationship with social media?
It's a love-hate. I take it in doses because I feel like it's just overwhelming and a lot of it isn't real.
Yeah.
And so I have to take it in doses. I would say that I've been the most active I've ever been on it within the past year, especially given all that was happening last summer.
Yeah.
But for a while, my page was on private.
Really?
Yeah, because that's how much I was just like, I don't need y'all. Unless you know me, you don't need to know my page.
Yeah.
And then, friends in my team was like, you got to open that up, girl. So literally I would say in the past, like, it was probably like February of last year that I opened it up. But yeah, it's a love-hate thing.
Yeah. Is there anyone that you recommend following that you enjoy that stands out to you?
Who I'm enjoying right now is Meg the Stallion. I love her content and I just love everything about her and how she's just so unapologetically herself.
Yeah.
And she's also from Houston. So,
There you go.
But I do love her page.
Oh, that's great. We always need recommendations, especially, we're all following her already, but if you're not, get on it.
If you're not, then you definitely should.
Yes. Okay. We're going to take one last break. And when we get back, we have our listeners and viewers submit some questions about life that they need like guidance or advice on that maybe you and I can offer some interesting perspectives on. So we'll be right back with more Not Too Deep.
Not too deep. With Grace Helbig.
Okay, we're back, and I have some submitted questions that I think you might have some really cool advice for. So the first one comes from Caitlin. She says, I have plenty of ideas for this or for that, and I find it very difficult to follow through. I used to have late hours and always use that as an excuse. I recently got a new job. I get off at a great time, and the job is boring. So during the evenings, I have the time to work, plus the drive to be creative due to the boring workday. What tactics can be helpful to sit down and do the work, but keep on working when that initial excitement is gone? Do you have any sort of ways in which you work, especially after working on a project for 3 years? I'm sure you have like peaks and valleys of how, in it you feel at the time. Have you developed any systems for yourself that help you stay motivated?
I mean, the first thing is letting go of the things that's not serving you. So, I mean, this is may not what she wants to hear, but I would say quit your job because it sounds like it's draining.
Yeah.
And go after your dreams, like go after what you really want. Like I think are in such a profound moment right now where so many people are questioning how they're showing up in life, right? So many people are asking the question, am I authentically showing up as myself? And so I think you're in a very prime time to do that. And if you feel that what you're currently doing is not what you want to do, which is what it sounds like, take a bet on yourself, quit that job and know that by doing that, that opens up way for all the things that's meant for you to come into place. And that way you'll have the energy and the drive to pursue those things that you really want to do. Because it's hard to go after what you really want when you've been so exhausted and drained by doing something that isn't fulfilling, that isn't you. So no matter what kind of advice is given to you, if you're in a space that isn't fulfilling you and that's actually draining you, that advice won't be sustainable because you won't have the energy to even do what's being advised for you to do. So, I mean, as much as this may not be the answer that you were intending, I would say let go of what's weighing you down so that the things that's meant for you can enter into the space.
That's beautiful advice. When you quit your retail working situation, first of all, how did you quit? Did you do it in a letter? Did you do it in a flourishing kind of verbal situation?
Yeah, no, I called and was like, I was inside the store and I was managing it. And I just called the regional manager and I was like, yeah, I quit today. I'm not doing this anymore. And she was like, well, can you just wait till tomorrow so we can find someone to replace you? I was like, nah, because y'all don't respect people. And I actually had no intentions of doing this. But when I walked in this morning, I was like, and I'm done. And so in that moment.
I mean, that's incredible. Like you get right to the point. Another question for you, for me, is for people that do work in retail. Like I waited a billion tables of my life, and I always wonder if you had any tips or tricks for dealing with customers that were just kind of, pieces of shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we had it all the time in the store that I worked at. Would come in, either felt really entitled or was just really just mean spirited.
Yeah.
I mean, there really isn't. I mean, I would have to catch myself. There were so many times I was just ready to pop off. Yeah. And I realized that I couldn't do that because of the title that I had at this particular company. And so for me, it was really just finding ways to not take it personal, as hard as that is. Mm-hmm. And then whenever that situation was over and dealt with, then I would find ways to vent and release it, right? So whether it was me calling a friend and just being like, I just need you to hold space for me right now and just let me vent, and them doing that. Or if a friend didn't have the capacity to hold space, like for me, it was a lot of breath work to really calm me down. Yeah. Or me journaling what I wish I would have said to that person just to get it out of my body and my system. Those are ways that really helped me. Because you don't really want to even give back the energy that they're giving you, because then that just perpetuates this negative cycle of just negative energy around your day. You know, like how something bad happened and then like bad stuff just keeps happening because you're in that space. So I would just find other therapeutic ways to release whatever energy they brought to the space.
Also, I think the phrase holding space is so great. I think it's such a succinct and pure way of just like saying what you need without saying like, I want someone's attention, like, which can feel very like superficial or very whatever. The idea of making space for yourself, for others, I think is a really simple but like very effective way to remind yourself of like showing up for people. I'm just that's me verbally making mental notes for myself throughout this interview. Okay, last question from a listener. They say, it's from Alexis. I'm 25 years old and I work in a major grocery store chain as a store manager. I feel lucky that I have this job because it's provided me with financial stability for the past few years while being so young. However, I'm constantly drained from being yelled at by rude, overprivileged customers and ridiculously high expectations from the corporate overlords. My job gives me no purpose. I'm scared to leave and potentially lose my financial stability, but I have a bachelor's in psychology. Should I say fuck the grocery store work and follow my passion into a master's program? I feel like I know your answer to this, but
I know. Absolutely, you should say fuck the grocery store. I think it's life is too long to be doing things that you don't love and that don't bring you joy. It's just not worth it. And at the end of the day, our most powerful currency is our mental state, right? Like that is our most powerful currency. And you have to remember that you're always experiencing someone else's reality and someone else's imagination, whether you want to or not, right? Like we are on this because you imagine this podcast and like enough people believed it for it to come true. Right. Facebook, social, like every experience that we experience in life is us experiencing someone else's imagination. And so why not gift yourself the permission to experience your own? Like you don't have to work at that grocery store. Like it doesn't serve you. You should absolutely leave that and go after your dreams. Absolutely.
I'm going to have to take that soundbite for myself and replay that back a billion times, because that was just such a beautiful way of putting into context everything that we do as creatives and humans in the world. Oge, this has been so wonderful. And I thank you so much for your time. We're getting towards the end here. But before we wrap up completely, we like to give a little token of our appreciation to our guests. And we have a personalized horoscope for you that Melissa just put in the chat. If you'd like to read it out loud to all of us.
Yes, it says, Dear Gemini, twins of the stars, the moon has been sitting in Gemini for a while now, which is driving you to pursue more of your goals. It may be a great time to pick up a new hobby, such as knitting a wonky ass scarf, even though it's almost summer.
There you go. It's in the stars somewhere. Yogi, also, I mean, I'm sure you're getting this question a billion times. What's coming up?
So many I'm not able to talk about, but just know that like this is only the beginning of you seeing this face, and I'm really excited about it all.
I'm so excited for you. Also, where can people find you now that your Instagram is open and available to the public, or wherever online that they should be checking you out? Where can people find you?
Well, all my social handles are the same, and it's just Oge the Yogi, which is OgeTheyogi.
Beautiful. And for people that haven't seen Invisible Portraits, is it available everywhere now for people to watch?
Well, right now it's only still available on OWN, but come the first week of April, it will be available everywhere. So you can check your streaming platforms.
Amazing. Thank you again for making time for us. Super, super appreciate it. And I can't wait to see everything that you're going to do. I know it's going to be awesome. Thank you, Oge. Make sure everyone, you go check out everything that this beautiful human is doing. It's incredible. And I have to go reflect and do some breathing work because I don't think I've taken a breath this entire episode. We'll see you guys next time on another episode of Not Too Deep. Goodbye.
Too deep, too deep, too deep, not too deep with Grace Helbig.
Not Too Deep is a production of Grace Helbig Incorporated, producer Melissa D. Montz, edited by Shireen Lani Yunus, post-production sound by Chris Henry, and an extra special thanks to Flula for the theme music.